Good night, everyone, and welcome to Globespan Television. Tonight, we have three outstanding guests on mental health issues. That will be our topic, and it'll be a learning program. But before we get to them, I want to thank Mr. Noir Singh for making this program available, Mr. Devin Bissoon and Mr. Ryan Gobin, our technical directors, and to all our supporters and sponsors. A very special thanks to all of you as well. Now, this is a fair and balanced network, and we can be heard on YouTube, Facebook, and other social media outlets. Make sure you tune in to listen to us because it's a very important program tonight. And the other thing I want to tell you is that the views expressed by our guests are solely theirs and not those of the management or staff of Globespan Television. We had a technical problem with the internet, so we're starting a bit late. And at this time, I want to say that, as most of you all know around the world, Florida has just been hit with a hurricane, Helene. Now it's being hit with another one, Milton. So let's all pray for the Floridians that they survive this massive Category 5 hurricane. Thanks to all of you for that. Now, our guest tonight is Dr. Adu Crow. He is a surgeon, a physician, and a specialist on mental health issues. We have Miss Yolette Hines, a social worker and also who have dealt with mental health issues. And last but not least, we have Ms. Alicia Solomon. She will join us anytime now. She also is the clinical coordinator for the New York State Psychiatric Mental Health History Project in Guyana, and so is Dr. Crow. Now, before we get started, I want to make it clear to every one of you that tonight this should be a learning program. And I hope you all listen and listen attentively so that we can take something away from this program as we go along. Now, our first guest tonight is Dr. Crow. Dr. Crow, welcome to the program.
Thank you, sir, and thanks for having me.
Ms. Solomon, welcome to the program.
Good night. Thank you for having me.
And Ms. Hines, welcome to the program.
Thank you again for the invite.
Now, my first question to all of you. Oh, Ms. Hines, before we get started, can you give us a background of yourself briefly? We know of Ms. Solomon already because she was on this program.
Sure. My name is Yolette Hines, and I've been a social worker for the last 5 years, but I've actually volunteered with the Guyana Red Cross since I was 16. So I've been doing a lot of field work before I came into the professional arena. Presently, what I'm doing would be I'm operating within my area. This is within the area of Patterson, but a lot of the viewers would actually know the area as Sophia. I live in Sophia. I have not done any work until now in my area because I really feel that there is a need for me to bring awareness and to bring social support to some of the issues, the social issues that are happening where I live. I've done a lot of work in terms of counseling to different areas in Guyana. I've worked in Region 4, I've worked in Region 3, Region 10, Region 6, Region 5, and basically providing psychosocial support to vulnerable families and children. So I've decided, as I have so much experience, not just with mental health, but of course with dealing with children and families, I've actually decided this year to start TLCS. Now, TLCS is Talk and Listen Care Service. We basically will provide psychosocial support, a lot of counseling, because I believe in counseling before any medication is given to a patient. I totally believe in counseling. So we will be able to provide that psychosocial support to members of the public and mainly my community, which is Sophia.
Okay. Dr. Crow, a background of yourself. Briefly.
Yes, okay. I am a physician, as you said, but I also have a doctorate in public health, and my doctorate in public health is is in sociomedical sciences. So I'm into research. I've worked with several governments within the Caribbean, and then after that, after a while, I joined PAHO WHO, and I worked in Barbados. Then I was transferred to Washington. Then I became head of WHO offices in Solomon Islands, in Papua New Guinea, and finally in Guyana, where I retired in 2020. Upon retirement, I joined the New York State Psychiatric Institute project called the Guyana Mental Health and Wellbeing Project, which is in Guyana. I joined that as their director, and I've been operating in that format since. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Now, Dr. Crow, I want to ask you this question first. Explain to our listeners, what is mental health? What is that? Is it a disease? Is it a virus? What is it?
Okay, mental health is a state of being whereby one is not at peace with themselves in many other ways, but it is something that almost all human beings go through. It can be a state, or it can lead to a situation whereby you have a psychosomatic lesion. What I mean is that there could be an organ that will lead, an organ failure that will lead to a disease. But generally, it's caused by many issues. And Guyana, as in many countries around the world, mental health issues are caused by a complex interplay of societal, economic, cultural, environmental factors. And these factors can then lead someone into an unstable situation in terms of their thinking processes. And I just want to add the fact that in mental health, all of us suffer from mental health issue one time or the other. You may be jilted by a lover and you go into a mental distress, and that is mental health. You may have a death in your family, and you go into a mental distress. That's part of mental health. But the issue is that one can go into a situation like that, but one should be able to come out of it. If you don't come out of it, then we have the sequela of what follows after an episode, whether it's after a stressor, whether it's a societal issue, whether it's economic issue, whether it's cultural issue, whatever issue it is, whether it's trauma or violence, all that. So in a nutshell, that's mental health, and all of us suffer from mental health at one point in our lives.
Do you know the ratio? Anyone of you know the ratio of mental health in Guyana percentage-wise? Does anyone of you know what percentage of the Guyanese population is suffering from mental health issues?
Okay, I think and probably the social workers can come in here. I think in mental health, when we talk about mental health, people think when one has gone beyond the threshold and is severe, that is mental health. But like I said, mental health could be destabilization issues affecting the humankind in many ways. Therefore, if we talk about ratio, then probably we need to specify that whether it's psychosis, whether it's dementia, whatever it is. Otherwise, it's difficult, to indicate what it is. But I'll tell you, there is a writer who said in his estimation, and that was an estimate, in his estimation, at any one time, only 90% of the population, and only 10% of the population happens to have no mental issue at any one time.
Okay, got you. Now, mental health, some of the causes are biological factors, environmental factors, social, cultural, economic factors. Now, Ms. Ms. Solomon, I want you to explain this. Environmental factors, is that including head injuries, poor nutrition, uh, uh, inhaling tobacco smoke, or experiencing something traumatic? Can you explain these factors to our listeners?
So, good night, everyone, again. So, the environmental, the biological factors, let's start there. It can be either inherited, so it would have passed down from a parent or a grandparent. Sometimes it tends to skip generation. Also, once the mother or the father are substance users, and they were especially the mother, and they're using while the child is in the womb, they're likely to develop some form of mental illness um, as they develop, or they can born with diseases that may lead to mental illnesses. Um, and then some traumatic experiences as it relates to, sometimes the child may have a fall or some form of injury in their young ages, and then as they get old they tend to develop mental health issues. The social factors can come from what is happening within families, within communities at the time. Maybe there's rioting and wars, or some form of dysfunction happening in that community or that neighborhood, and that also can be environmental as well. So it depends. So pollutions and all of these things can also lead to that, both environmental and social factors. So especially when we talk about environmental, we talk about environment. So whether it be your community, the country at large, because sometimes we tend to forget that we live in those spaces, and sometimes we think that whatever is going on in the country does not affect us, and that contributes to us, because sometimes it might not affect us directly, but indirectly what is happening could be the political atmosphere in the country at the time, tensions and wars, and people are forced to be displaced due to natural disasters. Sometimes you don't take into consideration natural disaster and the whole conversation about climate change. That's another conversation when we talk about environment. We have to take into consideration.
Okay, besides, studies have shown that one of the reasons for mental health is abuse. Now, you are a counselor. How would you address an abusive child? Counsel an abusive child. How would you do that? Or an abusive adult?
So, okay, great. So in counseling and abusive adults, I definitely would like to look at first the unresolved or undiagnosed or issues within their childhood. Any childhood traumas that the adult would have faced, we will first, as a counselor for myself, I would first deal with those trauma in your childhood, and then of course come back to know the present issues that adult might face. So a lot of my counseling for persons who have been abused will definitely come under the gender-based violence guidelines. So I follow a lot of those protocols where I deal with providing that client the opportunity to express their feelings, to do deep dive into some of the issues within themselves, within the family, within the environment, within the community. Because as we know, if we're dealing with violence and any trauma that an individual might face, you definitely have to look at the entire being. So I take it in different stages, my form of counseling, but I definitely first like to start with any unresolved childhood trauma, and then I will go into the present violence that the person is facing. I also like to ensure that my clients have an action plan, because a lot of times when we talk about violence and when we talk about clients facing violence, we say get out. That's the first thing persons would expect in the community. But I, as a counselor, would definitely encourage my clients to create an action plan, create a solution before you decide to leave. Ensure that you report those issues, because we realize again a lot of the issues when it comes to domestic violence or violence in the whole, they're not reported. So in me supporting my clients, what I do while we give that psychosocial support and while we help clients to develop that plan, we also help clients to liaison with legal aid so they can get the legal support that they need, and that will come back into the plans that the plan of being rescued out of that situation.
So,
Okay.
Dr. Rose,
Yes. Go ahead.
Before we
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry about that. I was just thinking about the questions where Dr. Williams would have provided his answer to, when we talk about mental health, a lot of
Dr. Crow.
Dr. Crow, sorry. When we
Yes.
talk about mental health, we sometimes don't look at the unresolved childhood traumas and we realize that it's surfaced. So I noticed he didn't mention it, so I just would probably like to add that we definitely have to look at that when we're dealing with mental health clients. And
Okay.
to answer your question pertaining to the persons, because I know you put out this question to the social workers as well. It's stated within the document, and persons can research it. It's stated that 1 out of 4 persons within Guyana would be suffering from mental health issues or illnesses.
Okay.
Well, in fact, World Health Organization states that it's not necessarily mental health illness, but will have a mental health condition, 1 out
Correct.
of every 4, which is 25%. But coming back to the issue of the environmental factors, which I think Alicia did justice to it. I just want to say, and she mentioned migration. In Guyana, we have a lot of migrants from Venezuela and other areas, and the impact of that, is there in terms of the mental well-being. The other area that I think where the host also mentioned is the storm, the effect of the storm, Helene, that gives it in its wake a sequela of mental health feelings that people go through from their loss, from displacement, from all that. So I think it's pertinent that we look at them, even though it may not necessarily be in Guyana alone, whereby there is an issue of migrants who have their own issues with with mental health. We also globally, yes, it has its place in terms of natural disasters. And if you take Guyana in 2005, the flooding as well. Over.
Yeah. That is so true. Yeah. Now, I want to ask you, Dr. Crow, this question. You said one of the major causes of mental health is biological factors such as chemical imbalances in the brain. How does chemical imbalances occur in the brain?
As we are born, we have our cells have innate qualities that control the way the cells behave. Now, any number of factors can occur to destabilize that innate quality. So, for instance, I'll give an example. Cells grow up to a point and stop growing. So, where another cell also grows to another point and they meet. When the system does not operate the way they should happen, then they keep on growing. And when they do grow like that, then obviously we have a situation of the cancers. Now, in terms of mental health, yes, we have certain chemicals within the body, and they must be controlled at certain levels. When the control is lost from a number of factors, it could be the fact that an enzyme process is missing, or the fact that you inherit a particular gene that is not supposed to be there. All these will then destabilize the system, such that yes, that imbalance would then lead to what we call phenotypic manifestation. The phenotypic manifestation is the gene manifestation is hidden, but then the phenotype manifestation is what then shows, and that is what we see as a mental health condition. Yes, so when that innate ability to control the cell growth, to control the humoral system, to control the immune system, to control the chemical system in the body, when that innate system breaks down, then you have the mental health condition. As my colleagues have also indicated, you can be born with a missing gene, and that in itself can then predispose you to have that mental condition. But in this day and world, that one can, once it's known early, something can be done. And I think we need to break the idea that once you have a mental health condition, because it's the whole family can be stigmatized, therefore we should keep it hidden. Once you keep it hidden, you are not going to resolve it. But if it's known early, something can be done. And that's a good thing about mental health now. Mental health is a state of well-being whereby the mind is able to help the body live with the stresses of this world, because this world is full of stresses. So the mind has to be able to live within that framework. And therefore, yes, if it's seen early, and the person is brought to see a relevant doctor, psychologist, social worker, yes, something can be done. And I think that is what I would like to leave with listeners, that we should try and go beyond the stigma and realize that it is normal. It's normal for all of us. Like I said, you can lose a spouse and suddenly you go into mental ill health. It doesn't mean that you are mad. It means that you've gone to a state of ill health, mental ill health. And therefore, once we remove the stigma, people can seek care. And once you seek care, yes, something can be done.
Stay tuned, our listeners, for a commercial break. All for one supplier. All the residents in the Queens area, especially West Indians, you can get all your curries, your West Indian foods and groceries, roti, fish, meat, all from one supplier. You can use your EBT card or your credit card. The number is 718-551-3292. And every item can be delivered directly to your home from one supplier. Go to the website, allfromonesupplier.com, where you can get all your West Indian dishes. And for those of you who are traveling, Globespan can fit all your needs. Globespan has been in business now for 30 years, and it can place you in any part of the world, in any country. It has upcoming tours into Dubai, India, South Africa, and Norway. Globespan is the airline you will need, the traveling agent you will need to book all your tickets. It has offices in New York, Rosalton in Guyana, Valpark, and in Chaguanas in Trinidad and Tobago. But you can call the New York number here, 718-845-0437. That's 718-845-0437 for all your traveling needs. Now, let's get back to this topic again. They're saying that mental health, one of the major outcomes from mental health issues, especially in Guyana, is suicide. Now, I did some research. The Guyana suicide rate is 41 suicides for every 100,000 people. 41 suicides for every 100,000 people. And that's the second highest in the world, after a country called Lesotho in southern Africa, just surrounded by South Africa. It was an enclave of South Africa years ago. Lesotho is 72 suicides for 100,000 people, the highest in the world. Suriname, out of about 204 countries that surveyed for suicide, Suriname placed sixth. United States placed 31. The Bahamas, 159. Jamaica, 175. St. Vincent, 180. Grenada, 181. Antigua, 182. And Barbados, 183. Now, in Guyana, suicides are more commonly among Indians. Amerindians too, but most among Indians. But Trinidad has more Indians than in Guyana. And Trinidad is about 194, 195 with the suicidal rate list there. Why is it suicidal rate is so high in Guyana, especially among the Indian population? Alicia?
So because suicide is so complex, there is no one reason or one cause of suicide. So, like you're aware, myself and Dr. Adiko, we are currently working on a project to really find out why is this true for Guyana. There's no true data say there's no one data to say that this is the cause or that is the cause, but it's a complex situation. What I can say to you from experience and talking with people as well, we see a lot of factors that contribute. We see dysfunction, we see abuse, we see substance misuse, whether it be alcohol or or narcotics, and then we're seeing the introduction of new drugs such as lean and all and other forms of drugs coming in the local market. There's also um, dysfunction as it relates to family dysfunction, relational dysfunctions, financial issues, um, problem with the law. Persons having problem with the law and not able to cope. So again, because suicide is so complex and every situation is unique, we cannot say this is the one cause or that is the one cause. It depends also on the atmosphere and the time of the year, what is happening in the country at the time, what kind of holiday is happening, what people are doing, and all of those factors that we need to take into consideration before we can say what exactly are causing person from a particular ethnic group or a particular location in Guyana. So there's no one factor. There's so many contributing factors. And so we're hoping at the end of the Guyana Wellbeing Project that we can say, these are the causes and address them adequately.
Ms. Hines, now, as I said to you, suicide is prevalent in Guyana, especially up the quarantine area. You do outreaches. What type of outreach program you could implement to avoid or to reduce the suicide rate?
So presently, what we're doing at TLC, we're actually doing a lot of education and sensitization for our children because we want to start from the grassroots level. We want to ensure, because we're doing a lot of community-based work, we would advise that it starts with education in the home, and it definitely can start from the smallest child. So on our TLC, what we have created would have been the Healthy Me, Healthy You program. And this program basically gives children the information when it comes to mental health issues and mental health illnesses. So we start with a simple thing as educating our children on what is mental health illnesses, what is mental health issues, what is mental health in the whole. We advise as well what we're doing on our level. Even though our program has not reached other communities, this program definitely will target areas that you have mentioned, such as Berbice. You can use it in such a way where if we educate the family, we can then educate the community. And it starts from there. A lot of issues when it comes to suicide, there's no information being shared on the grassroots level. So the program that we have created would give children education, would give adults the information, and would of course provide a referral pathway for persons suffering from mental health illnesses. So when you come on board with the Healthy Me, Healthy You, what would happen? As we do our education and as we do our sensitization, if children recognize that there's an issue in the home, if they report it, they share that information to the parents can then reach out now to us, and we will then provide counseling for that person and refer them yet again to the mental health unit. So in order to reduce or eradicate that issue, it starts with the simplest thing as education and sensitization.
Dr. Adikro, what
Yes.
is needed in Guyana to reduce the high suicide rate? It's a population of less than 800,000 people. As a matter of fact, Lesotho, I think, has about 2.5 to 3 million people. But to have that high suicide rate in the world, what do you think are some of the solutions? We want to be solution based as well. What do you think are some of the solutions that could reduce suicide rates in Guyana?
Okay, let me. I just want to touch a little bit on the first question and then come back to this. What we can do. So, with respect to suicide, it is a spectrum, and the spectrum is made up of 4 different stations. Stations. The station one is what we call ideation. You start having ideas, do I belong to this world or I need to check out? So that's the ideation. Then if nothing happens, if nothing positive happens, then they move on to what we call planning, the planning stage. Okay, now I already have the idea, now I need to plan and kill myself. Now, if nothing happens, they move from that planning stage to attempt stage. Now, if nothing happens, they move from the attempt to actually finishing it. And I'm saying this because for every one suicide, for every one death, there are, according to research, there are about 20 to 25 people who have attempted. So if in Guyana we say we have about 100 suicides a year, now multiply that by 20, and that gives you the number of persons who have attempted suicide, and that is a big issue. That's a big issue. So the fact that we say normally we have about 100 to 120 people committing suicide in Guyana a year, you multiply that by just 20 alone, and you are looking at 2,400 persons who may have attempted suicide. So it's a big issue. Now, normally when we talk about suicide, we think about the end, that people who have actually lost their lives. But the number of people who actually attempt, they continue to do it if nothing happens. And that's why it's good that we have the programs that the social workers are helping, the psychologists are helping to put in place. Now, I would also want to, there are a few hypotheses that have come out there, and I just want to raise just a few, and I am not going to belabor that point. One is the fact that, yes, Trinidad, they have a lot of persons of Indian descent, but we have a higher death rate. In fact, we say it's age-specific, age-standardized death rates is what you quoted, which is the 41 per 100,000, which is a WHO figure. I just want to add that this figure is from 2015. They've revised it recently. I think 2022 figure is a little less. But in suicide,
let me just say that, no, there's a 2022 figure I'm giving you.
Oh, really?
In 2015 it was 44.
In 2015, when I was with WHO, our figure was 41 or 43 per 100,000. So
but in Guyana,
yes,
it was 44, and now it revised lower down to 41.
41, and 41 is very high. It's very high, and also the fact that there's a lot of stigma. We may not even be reporting all of it, because if you have a family, someone kills themselves, you are ashamed to let people know. If it's in a village, they'll just go and bury it. Does it? I come from Ghana. In Ghana, when someone kills themselves, the same day they must be buried, and they must be buried without anybody knowing. So because of this, the stigma. So now, some of the hypothesis is the fact that, okay, why do we have Indo-Guyanese having a higher rate? Is because a lot of the Indo-Guyanese happen to be the farmers, and they have access to the organophosphates. They have access to the gamozones and the insecticides that they can easily ingest. So that's that. Then also, there's an issue of culture amongst and this is some time past amongst Indo-Guyanese that and amongst Indian movies. In fact, if your lover jilts you, you just kill yourself. So that culture has permeated for a while. And obviously, the idea is that we have to make sure that it changes. Part of it is also culture. Culture. Why do I say it's culture? We've had cases of young girls who have been asked to marry somebody else that they don't want by the family, and they said, "Well, I don't want that. Then I better leave with my boyfriend or my girlfriend," and they kill themselves. So that aspect of culture and giving people out in marriage, that could also play a role. Then I think Alicia talked about the family dysfunction and finances, all that come into play. Now, your question: what do we do? I think we like the program TLCS that your guest, yes, Ms. Hines, is talking about. We need to have such more of these programs whereby they serve as the gatekeepers. They serve as a from ideation to planning to attempt before you get the person to help. The moment you have to try and even prevent the ideation before it goes further. So I think we need a lot of the gatekeepers. We need also a lot of phone calls. There is research that says that if someone wants to kill themselves and you are able to talk to the person continuously for about 5 minutes, you can change majority of them. You can change their minds if you can get their attention continuously, and that's why it is important to have the phone system working so that people can get to that. Now, the last point, because there are many things that we can do. The last point that I would like to do is something that Guyana tried many years ago. If a lot of the cases of suicide is from ingestion of poisons, of insecticides, then why don't we put the insecticides under lock and key? And this has been tried in China and it worked. What they did was, you go and, because you can only buy the pesticides from specific shops designated by Ministry of Agriculture. So you have to show them that yes, you have a place where the insecticide is going to be kept, and there are 2 keys kept by different people, so that if they're going to use the insecticide, Alicia will bring her key, I will bring my key, and both of us will open it and then use it. But it has broken down where the keys are anywhere. Anybody can go and pick the keys and then go and bring. So there are a lot of things I think we need to look at the culture. We need to look at the gatekeepers. We need to look at the telephones that people can call, and also Ministry of Health, to which Alicia belongs, they have done quite well in training healthcare workers in what we call the MH gap. And the MH gap is the MH gap trains all people to think of mental health, so that you could be a surgeon, you could be an obstetrician, you could be a general practitioner, you could be a family practitioner, but you know something about mental health, so that when someone comes, you don't lose that opportunity. So I think it's a multi-pronged issue that no one entity, psychologists cannot solve it alone, social workers cannot solve it alone, doctors cannot solve it alone, and even society has to play their part. So all of us have to play our part in terms of the solution to it.
So what you're saying, we need is like this Heinz program, talk and listen care, to go across the country, especially those areas like Orbis and in the Amerindian districts where suicide also is prevalent, to talk about reaches, to talk to these people on a daily basis or a weekly basis. You said you think that will prevent suicide.
Yes, because Doc, sometimes people just need people to talk to. And once they see that somebody is there to listen, you'll be surprised how people just come back to you and then try to offload all the things on their minds that is pushing them to react. So I think if we can get a lot of these programs into almost everywhere, I think that will go a long way.
Okay, good.
If I can share, Dr. Rose, before we go on to the other question, just to add to what Dr. Chrome is saying, I would definitely recommend a mental health digital hub, because a lot of persons, as we say, talk is, you can talk in the community, you hear these programs. A lot of persons are using technology as a form of relief and a form of support to deal with these issues, these mental health issues and suicide issues. I definitely would recommend the mental health digital hub. This is where persons on in the community can come, get on to a hotline service just similar as the suicide prevention hotline, but this digital hub basically can give the support where we'll have the information readily available, because we know, Dr. Chrome, a lot of our dates-based information is not shared across agencies, and more so WHO would be the sorry, not WHO, but GPHC, or the mental health unit, might only be that body that has that information. But we want to ensure, if we have that hub, we can now share the information to different sectors. It can be shared to persons that are doing the mental health gap, the gatekeepers. They can have access to that information. And database is very important if we're going to give statistics to the wider world, because we know a lot of times we can say we're having a lot of numbers, but there's no readily available information that people can get to see it, to see the trends, to see the areas that are affected. Thank you.
I think that's a great idea, and I know that government has an electronic referral system whereby you can call, but the issue with that is how many people. Some people may not even have the units to be able to call. That's one. And
Right.
two, I travel to some places that I think I should have telephone service, and then telephone service is not readily available. So a hub like this, that is a central place that people can just go to, and I think that would be a great idea.
So, Alicia, tell us what the New York State Physical Mental Wellbeing Program is all about.
So the Guyana Wellbeing Project, we have a number of projects that are running simultaneously. So currently we have started the suicide study, which focuses on 3 areas. We have the clinical attempters, so persons who would have attempted and show up into an ER or at an health center or any health facility. Those data are referred to us and we speak with their families. Then we have the completers, the persons who would have died by suicide. We speak with their families. So, to family member to talk to them about their experience and warning signs and what they have noticed and stuff like that. And then we're going to have the national study that is hoping to start very soon, which will talk to random persons. We're hoping to talk to 9,000 persons between the ages of from 10 years old to infinity. So 9,000 persons randomly we're hoping to talk to, just to hear about their experience, and if they know about suicide, what have they heard about suicide, and what programs and how we can implement programs to help better the communities. So that we have. Then we also have the GRIT program, where we are training Guyanese to do research. So that program is run with the University of Guyana, and so it's currently ongoing. Soon, the 4th cohort, the application is going to be open sometime in November for our 4th cohort to start in February of next year. So we are going to share the information with you, Dr. Rose, so that you can put it out there, hoping that persons are going to register. It's for Guyanese living in Guyana. It's free. It's through Columbia University in New York, but it is also it's a collaboration with Columbia and the University of Guyana. We're also hoping to start a study with the Georgia Public Hospital. So those are some of the things that we're doing here in Guyana.
Dr. Rose, if I can add to what Alicia gave us, So the clinical attempt test and the loss, we are looking at both the adults population, that's 15 to above, and then we are looking at the child population, which is 10 and above. And you'll be surprised, or maybe not surprised, that in Guyana, we are beginning to see deaths by suicide, ages falling. We've had a couple of 10-year-olds who killed themselves because their parents took their cell phones from them. The other things that Alicia didn't add, and I just want to add, is we have another part of the study whereby we want to measure the water intake, the water that the people take. The idea, and I thought this was an innovative thing that came from our boss. She said she looked at the data in the quarantine, the Quarantine River, the part that is in Suriname, and the part of the river that is in Guyana, both sides, suicide is high. So why is it that the suicide is high along the Quarantine River? So he said, is it something in the water? If it is, let's study it and find out what it is. So every person who attempts suicide or every person who dies from suicide, when we go to the home and we interview, we also take a sample of the water to look at the heavy metals, to look at whatever issues in the water that may, and it may mean nothing, but we have to investigate to see why. Then the other part that we also do is with persons who die, we actually take a DNA sample, and the DNA sample we take we take saliva, and we add it to a global pool so that it can be studied to see whether is there any genetic marker that predicts that someone is likely to commit suicide. So this is work in progress, and it's going to be groundbreaking, because assuming we don't find any marker, that is fine. But if we find a marker, it means that once you're born, we can determine whether you are likely to have suicidal issues in future. And therefore, if the marker is there, then we start working with you with all the programs that are presently there. So those are the other areas that we are working in. Thank you. And
I'll ask
and thank you, Alicia.
You can answer this question. Is there a difference between depression and mental health?
Oh, depression is one aspect of mental health. In fact, like I said earlier, all of us go through depression at one stage in our time. I mean, I lost my mother a few months ago, and I thought I was going to be perpetually depressed. But you have to go, you go through it, and there's a period of mourning, but then you come out of it, and that is the normal way of grieving. But if it continues for a long time, then we know that it is becoming abnormal, and there's a need to go through social workers and psychologists and psychiatrists in terms of counseling, and if need be, then medication. But usually we start off with the counseling and helping people live before medication. Yes, and depression happens to be one of the major causes of mental health in many countries. Obviously, you want to look at the psychosis, but that's a smaller number. But depression happens to be a much bigger number in terms of the numbers that plague society. Yes, it's part of mental health.
And do we have enough mental health specialists in Guyana to diagnose persons' mental health? And do we have enough psychologists or sociologists to help them heal? But the question should be then is, could mental health be healed?
Yes.
Oh yes. Well, I don't want to, take the platform without allowing. Please go ahead, and I can also add something. Please go ahead.
Yolan, go ahead. Ms. Sainz, go ahead.
Yes, mental health can be healed. You know, when we, just as Dr. Chrome is saying, mental health is basically, it's something that every individual has. The issue will be is where you have a mental health illness. That's the difference. Because everybody has mental health as their makeup. That's their thinking, that's their feelings, that's how they operate. But where it will be a mental health issue is where you're having a long-term stage of emotional dysfunction. So it can be healed with counseling, with therapy, with time, with a lot of talk and care and listening for persons that are suffering from it. I also, advise some of my clients is to have a balance when it comes to any mental health illnesses that you might detect, such as for the simplest one as depression or anxiety. Try your utmost best to balance your feelings and your thinking and your thoughts and look at it in terms of your actions. I also advise my clients that you definitely want to ensure your emotional being and your physical being is balanced. So what we do now in our organization is that we help clients to be emotionally stable and to have a physical exercise as yoga. So definitely, working out some of the stresses and some of the fatigue that the body feels, it definitely helps what is happening in the mind with the support of counseling.
But someone with a chemical imbalance in their brains, how do you heal that person?
Through medication.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, through medication. There is something that I would like to mention to add to what Ms. Hines just said, because I know that Alicia may also want to come in, and that is the country has decided to go through what we call a paradigm shift, whereby we move away from institutional mental health to community mental health. And what does that mean? When you go to the national referral, the psychiatric referral hospital in Kanji, you have people there who've been there for 20 years. That gives the impression that nothing can be done. No, something can be done. And when some, like in my case, when I lost my mother, of course I was distable. But did I stay in that mode for a long time? No. Gradually, I had to go through coping mechanisms to move out and live a normal life again. And that is what should happen in the cases of mental health. So when people have acute cases, they come to the mental health area, just like you said, they're given medications for psychosomatic issues, some issues that need medicaments, of course, that can help restore some of the balances. And then what happens is that you allow the person to go home and be part of society. But if you keep that person for 20 years, that means that mental health cannot be cured, and therefore, once you get a mental case, you are there for life. And I think the country has decided that yes, there's a need to move away from institutional mental health to community mental health, whereby only the phase whereby people are aggressive or anything of the sort. Yes, you go to the mental health center, you are treated. When everything comes down to normal, then you go back to society, and that's the way to go. So yes, it can be treated, and once it's treated, you go back to society and live your life. And there are many mental health cases that have gone on to lead normal life. When I was head of PAHO, I took staff from the ministry to two places, to Belize. Belize has a very good community mental health system, whereby it's community and not institution, whereby you stay there for about 4 days, maximum 2 weeks, depending on which case it is, and then you go back, back home. For that to be successful, that means that we need to also do away with the issue of stigma, because if there are many people that the families don't want the people back because everybody knows that they are mad. No, we cannot let people know that they are part of us. So we have to deal with the stigma before community mental health can be successful. Yes.
Okay, Ms. Solomon, let me ask you this question: is there a specific way to test someone for mental health and diagnose someone with mental health?
So we look for signs and symptoms before we can. We must know the signs and symptoms, and these signs and symptoms has to be present for at least 14 days consistently for a physician or for anyone to be diagnosed with a mental illness. So, and it depends on what mental illness. Let's talk about depression. In Guyana, depression is tend to be, it's a term we use all the time. We tend to use the term depression all the time, but what really is depression? Depression is basically us. It's a period of sadness. It's just this. We can wake up this morning and feel sad, like Dr. Adekar used the example of him losing his mother and feeling sad. Yes, you're expected to grieve, you lost someone, but if that feelings continue and then you start to lose interest in your everyday activity, you start to don't want to get out of bed, you don't want to bathe your skin, you don't want to brush your teeth, yes, we can call that depression. But if it's just okay, you're feeling sad because you lost someone, and that's okay. But if it continues, then we have a problem. So it has to be, for any mental illness has to, any signs has to be present for at least 14 days. And this has to be consistently. So every day you're seeing these symptoms, every time it's happening. And it's, in some cases, it progresses as the 14 days come by.
I have a question from one of our listeners here, and I'm sure she's a Borabician like me. She said there's a mental health hospital in Borabis, which is called the Madhouse.
Yes.
And she said that she wants to know. Well, she mentioned she had one of her brothers who went there, and he got worse while stationed there. She wants to know if keeping people confined in an institution will improve their mental health or make it worse. Dr. Crow?
Yes, my feeling is that when you keep people for a long time, you make them worse. Why? These people who have been there for 20 years now, they don't even know how to shop. They don't even know how to use money well. They don't know how to live within society. That culture, that acculturation process is lost. So yes, we don't have to keep persons for more than is necessary, and that's why now most governments are moving away from institution, keeping people in the institution, to keeping them for the acute stage, make sure that they go to normalcy, and then you release them, and that's the way to go. I just want to also touch a little bit on the question that you just asked. Yes, as Alicia said, you can diagnose a mental health issue quite easily. In fact, from the symptoms that people give, the patient's thoughts, their feelings, their behaviors, their moods, you can assess all that. And then Alicia talked about duration. That is a big factor. The intensity of the presentation, the impact of the symptoms, you can look at that. And then also somebody who may have a history, somebody who may have a family history, all that come into play. And then I just want to add that we have a scale. There is a scale that is used. It's called DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual on Mental Disorders. So that scale is a series of questions. Depending on the answers that you give to that scale, one can tell where you are in terms of mental disorder. Yes, so it can be measured objectively using the DSM. We used to have the DSM-4. Now the new module is a DSM-5. So yes, that can be done, as Alicia did say. Yeah, but yes, also the answer to the listeners in the question is, it's not good to keep a patient overly for a long period of time. And then also the madhouse. Yes, now we've stopped using the madhouse. So I hope other people will also stop using the madhouse, because it gives a very bad connotation that will never erase the stigma. If you continue to say that madhouse, why? And I'll give you an example. Why did we move away from having HIV have their own clinic, because once you go to that clinic, everybody knows that you have HIV. So it had to be part of the system, and to designate something as a madhouse is going to prevent people from seeking early care for mental ill health. Over.
So what would you call the institution?
Oh, the psychiatric referral hospital, or even mental health, because mental health refers to everybody. And the idea now is, like I said, to have minimal care. They bring the acute phase down, and then once you are stabilized, you go home. And community, but that also means that we have to train community nurses, community social workers, community psychologists, so that they can continue in the field, in the community. Otherwise, you discharge the person, and the person comes back again within a week, and you don't want that.
Okay, Ms. Hines, let me ask. You mentioned yoga at the beginning of the show. Does yoga help mental health patients?
What we're doing is basically provide the physical exercise in terms of yoga, and not so much of the meditation part, but the physical exercise, because we see a lot of times when it comes to issues such as anxiety and depression, you will find that persons feel it in their bodies as well as they feel it in their minds. So we are trying to implement the idea of persons understanding that there is a connection between body and mind, and both needs to work healthy or to work in sync in order to get that healing. So yes, you can have a lot of stretches that release tension in the body, any part of the body, and our yoga instructor is such a professional person at what she does, and she's so informed of which area or which stretch can actually help you reduce the tension. And we've seen it in clients that after we've done counseling first, and we're doing a lot of counseling, after every session of counseling, we provide that opportunity for clients to have yoga exercise just after, and the feedback is great, because clients say, I was thinking a lot of I had a lot of negative thoughts, but when I did my deep breathing from my yoga session, I realized my body became more relaxed. So that is what TLC is doing on our end. We want to ensure that clients understand body and mind goes together. So yoga does help, exercise does help.
Are TLC services free, or there's the fee?
Pardon me?
Do you charge?
Oh, so we have what TLC is doing, and the good thing about our service is that we provide the community aspect is free. So we're doing a lot of community development projects, and it's free. There's no charges. So we're going out in the community and we're doing the education and the sensitization and the yoga stretches and the exercise and the information for our children is free for the children and the parents. On the client aspect of it, we have that side as well, where persons can call, they can do WhatsApp, they can do video calls, they can do Google Meets, and they'll have that session as low as 3,500. So when you have your you need to get free yoga, 3,500 yoga counseling and free yoga for all our clients. That's what we're doing on our end.
Dr. Crow, they're saying now that the social media network also help 10 and 12-year-old kids develop mental health issues. But is that really true?
The question again, sir?
Yeah, can you?
Dr. Crow?
Yes. What's the question again? Can you repeat the question?
A study has shown, and this came from Harvard Medical School, that the social networks of today, many of them, because 9, 10, and 11-year-old kids have cell phones going on these networks all day, that helps to develop mental health problems with these kids at an earlier age. Is there any truth to that? I mean, a study has shown that, so.
Well, I'm surprised, to hear that somewhat, but it goes without saying, because I just gave you two instances where 10-year-olds kill themselves because their cell phones have been taken by their parents as a disciplinary action. But a colleague of mine also, her doctoral dissertation was socialization and what she called social connectedness. Social connectedness is how many people you are connected with within society, so to keep you well buttressed in society. And she actually measured it. And the higher the social connectedness, the better it was for any one individual. So on one hand, it's good, but if it's a child and is being abused, obviously is going to be bad, because why? Children look to copy people who are trendy. So if in the school there's someone who many people like, and irrespective whether the person is doing something good or bad, other children are going to copy that person. So when you have that link, obviously it's going to be negative, and that's how I feel. Even though social connectedness has been shown to be positive, but with children, yes, the reverse can occur.
Ms. Solomon, the Guyana Wellbeing Project you're working on, and you can chime in on this as well, Dr. Crow. Does it have a different type of instructions for kids, let's say between 10 and 16, and a different for adults, different programming?
So of course, so based on the age group that the person following, the questions and the question is tailored towards the age group. So there, some of the questions are going to be across the board, like the biological name, your age, your sex, and stuff like that. But the other questions are tailored for the age group. So because we're working with both adults and children, the questions are different that are tailored towards the children as opposed towards the adults. So they don't answer all of the same questions all the time.
What are your objectives of the mental health well-being program in Guyana? What are the outright objectives?
So
yeah, Alicia, go ahead.
So we're hoping to collect as much data as possible, make data available. That's our number one objective. We're also hoping that when we get these data, we're able to inform policies and to help to respond to some of the challenges that would have come out of the research, to help to create programs that will impact and create changes, reduce stigma, and address the needs of community, create support systems to help persons to get better, to stay well, and to, in general, promote healthy mental health and good mental health, and to help with the reduction of suicide and substance misuse generally. I don't know if Dr. Ankro wants to add any other.
Yeah, I'll give you an experience. I was party to a selected group to give a presentation to Parliamentary Subcommittee on Social Services. And the data that we had from PAHO was different from the data that Ministry of Health had, was different from the data that Ministry of Home Affairs, that's the police, had, was different from data that I think there was another one from Ministry of Education. Why should all the data in terms of persons who've killed themselves in Guyana be different? So obviously there is a mismatch. So what this study looks to find is what is the true level of suicides in Guyana. That's one. So we want to know how many really kill themselves in Guyana, the true numbers. And then the second point, we want to know why they kill themselves. Because you ask that question, and we have a lot of theories, we have a lot of hypotheses, but we want to know the real why. So the questionnaire is about 3 hours long, and we look at everything: what you eat, what you drink, and Alicia knows more about the instrument than I do. What is likely to affect you in many ways that that many people will not even think about. So there are a lot of research has been done, but no research has gone into that detail that we want to go into.
Ms. Hines, I want to ask you this question. You said your TLC is based in Sophia. What's the reason for having it there? Is because you're there, or there are high incidence of mental health issues in Sophia?
The main reason is because I live in Sophia. I've been living in Sophia from age 5, and I'm now 39. So I have spent all my life. I've never lived in another area before I moved to Sophia. I've never migrated. So I definitely want to ensure that I provide service, as I've been doing to other communities, giving counseling to other communities, and I've basically neglected my home. I've come back to base, and I've come back to my home to provide that service free of charge. And we do not have a lot of reported incidents. There's just a few, because the area is so big and it's basically divided into 5 subsections.
Yeah.
There's not a high number of mental health illnesses or issues in this area, but I do not want to, go past the area or come out of this area to give a service that I can give here. I'm seeing in my area, we have a lot of substance use among our children, misuse among our children. So we're going to ensure that when we give the service concerning mental health, we're going to talk about substance misuse as well from my area. And please note, Dr. Rose, that TLC, even though we're operating out of Sophia, we're not only going to serve this community alone. We want to branch off to different communities. We want to assist in community mapping, because we have persons in my organization that are qualified social workers with their masters and their degrees. So we can assist in community mapping as well. We can assist in providing mental health trainings and mental health educational educational programs for children in different areas.
Okay, Alicia, let me ask you this question. Mental health is a general issue, and it's prevalent we know in Guyana. The onset is about 25%, but studies have shown it's about 35%, and they say it's rising. Now, we talked about the causes of this already, a number of issues, but can you pinpoint 2 or 3 main reasons why mental health issues are so prevalent in Guyana?
I could attempt to say, first, let me start off by saying that none of these causes are written in stone. Like I said earlier, it is dependent on what is happening. What is happening socially, what is happening environmentally, what is happening in the environment culturally as well. So one of the major issues, and Ms. Angela alluded to it earlier, is substance use and substance misuse. We've seen an increase with substance use, especially in our younger population, and with the influx of the migrants, we're seeing an introduction of new forms of drugs coming into our society. And also with the internet, we see students who are experimenting. So I also work in the school system, and last term I was told about some new drugs that I didn't even heard about before. So we see a lot of experiments happening, especially in the younger population, because of the internet and because of the Venezuelans and the Brazilians and all the other persons that are coming. So we're seeing more drugs, more drug use, more drug misuse. Also, people lack coping mechanism. People do not know how to cope. People are looking for escape. People are looking for a way out. And because they may not know, or they do not know what is available or how to access services. Some people, and also the issue of confidentiality. People do not know who to talk to because of stigma, because of discrimination. We've talked extensively about stigma and discrimination tonight. Because of stigma and discrimination, people do not want to go out. People do not want to be seen. I can share so much experience of persons, because our building mark mental health, they would not come through the gate because they're afraid that somebody might pass and see them, but they need the help. So, because of stigma and discrimination, people are not seeking help. They're not talking. They don't know who to talk to because they're afraid that their information may get into the wrong hands. Right? So, there's so many factors. There's no one factor. Like I said earlier, and this is going to always be my contention, we have to create safe spaces so that people are going to want to seek help. And the sooner we understand that one of the first and major steps of people getting help is creating safe and support systems, people are going to come for help, and we're going to get a safer society. But if we don't have that, and we continue to stigmatize, we continue to discriminate, people are going to continue to suffer in their silence, and they're going to continue to get more people suffering with mental illness.
Okay. Now, I got a question here from a teacher. She's a senior mistress. I should send her and say I can mention her name, but I will not mention her name. She says a lot of students in her school are suffering from mental health issues, and it has led to slow learning, and they don't have the teaching capacity to cope with these slow learners. So the slow learners are always being left behind in a class, and eventually they're dropped out from school. So how do we address that issue, Dr. Pearl?
I think if I have the luxury of going back to your last question, if you ask me for three things, I would say alcohol and drugs, one. Violence, whether it's intimate partner violence or violence in school or bullying in school, violence is another major cause, and obviously culture. So those would be my three. But coming back to your question, I think we need to have special learning teachers. In the US, there are teachers that are set aside to help and assist students who are slow learners, or students who are coming.
They're actually trained in that, yes.
Exactly. And if we decide to leave them behind, it's going to be a problem for society.
Yeah,
it's going to be a problem. So we cannot leave them behind. In fact, the new notion by governments all over within the United Nations is do not leave anyone behind. We cannot leave them behind. Otherwise, it will be a solution today, leaving them behind, but a big problem tomorrow. Why we left them behind? So I think there should be special special tutors who will take care of these cases so that it doesn't become an issue for us tomorrow.
Ms. Saenz, you want to weigh in on that?
Yes, I was about to ask if I can. So I know, coming out of a training from the Ministry of Legal Affairs, this is the human rights training. One of the teachers was a part of the training, and he had stated that special ed training is now being done. It's now being offered at the training college, the teacher training college. So Guyana is improving a lot when it comes to the different sectors and the different issues that we find in the school system. But what I would say is that while we have a special ed trainer or teacher for a slow child, we definitely need to incorporate a counselor. And we see that yet again, Guyana is improving because we have guidance and counselors in the school system. So the guidance and counselors, as well as the special ed trainers, definitely will need to work together to help that child. because they can't work separately. Because even if you help that child academically, when it comes to the learning disabilities, there's still the need to help the emotional side when it comes to the mental health issues. So the guidance and counselor trained person as well as a special ed teacher can incorporate, they can collaborate and just come together and create a curriculum that will deal with the academic as well as the emotional side for that child.
Also, I believe that it has to be a collaborative effort, whether it be we could create all of these programs, but again, it comes back to some of the parents, because some parents do not
Yeah.
accept that their child has a learning disability, or the child has a mental health issue. First thing say, oh, you putting thing on me child, but really and truly they're seeing it. And I can tell you, during the pandemic we would have seen an increase of abuse, because the children were left home with the parent, and they exhibit some of the same behaviors that the teachers were telling the parents about. And you know what they did? They beat the children for them to learn and for them to think, but it was really them exhibiting what the teachers were saying. And because parents do not understand, they
Yeah.
they might have used violence. But again, we have to start from educating our parents and letting them know that these are the signs, these are the symptoms, and there's no shame in coming and say I need help, or allowing your children to go through the process. Right, the old thing of leaving them behind. Some parents say, oh, they're not happening to me child, I plead the blood of Jesus and all of those things. Yes, we know you have your religious belief, but parents also has a big role to play, and in supporting and helping
Yeah.
that child to go forward.
Agreed. We have come to the end of the program, and you all did a thorough job, a very good job in explaining the causes of mental health and some of the solutions that can be found. I hope our listeners learned a lot from the program tonight, but we'll have to continue this at a subsequent time. Time ran out on us. So I'll give you all to say your closing remarks. Dr. Crow, we'll start with you, your closing remarks.
Oh, I think efforts to address mental health in Guyana are growing, and overcoming these challenges require investment. And I'm hoping that government will provide such investment in mental health services for programs like the one by Ms. Hines, by psychologists, by psychiatrists, by general practitioners, by nurses, by midwives, so that we do not miss any opportunity. And I must say that we must also take some of these progress that is going to be made into the indigenous population and the hinterland, because it's part of Guyana, and even one life lost is one life too many. And then factors such as family pressures that lead people to suicide, substance abuse, depression, lack of mental support. All these contribute to mental health dilemma that we have. And it's my hope and prayer that public education to reduce stigma and the integrated approach. And I think Alicia mentioned the integration. There must be all government sectors, faith-based organizations, civil society, just like Ms. Hines' own, and also the community. We should all come together and make sure that we have an integrated approach to this socio-economic issue that we have. Thank you.
Ms. Hines, your closing remarks.
So my closing remark would be basically family. It starts from the family level. We definitely need to have the acceptance that family need to understand that if there's an issue, there's resources available. get out and get the resources that is available, educate the children, and just work together as a whole in order to support that person in the family that is suffering from a mental health issue. In terms of the community, we definitely need to try to avoid some of the stigma labels or the terms that we might use if we realize that there's one person in another family that is suffering from a mental health issue. We want to encourage community that we have to support people living with mental health issues by reducing the labels and the stigma and the terms that we use towards that individual. And on the government level or the national level, we have seen a lot of programs are being implemented, but we definitely want to have a follow-up. We want to ensure that research is being done, newer ways to get mental health or to get the support to the community is being done. We utilize all of these programs that we're having, but we definitely need to come back to the table and to understand, was it successful? Have we done enough work? So my definite thing that I want to leave the audience with is that anybody can suffer from a mental health illness. Try your utmost best to research it and to be healthy. You definitely want to talk to somebody about it.
Thank you. And Ms. Solomon?
I would like to support all the persons that have come before me that had promised I. But also to say that for us to have a better society, it starts with us as individuals. For us to, make small steps. We might say, oh, I'm only one person, but that one thing that you can do as a person to help changing the narrative. Suicide prevention team this year was to change the narrative on suicide. Change the way we speak about suicide, change how we talk to people about suicide, change how the terminology that we use, to help reduce the stigma. And on Thursday, we'll celebrate World Mental Health Day, and the theme is to prioritize mental health in the workplace. But it's for us to prioritize mental health, for us to really prioritize our own mental health first, do things to address our own mental health. But it starts with us as an individual, and the one thing you do for yourself is important. Set aside time for your own self. Even if it's just to get a good night's sleep, even if it's just to take a long shower, or to just say, listen, today's the day that I'm going to sleep in, those tiny steps can go a far way. And remember that there's no health without mental health. So no matter what you do, no matter what you accomplish in this life, if we don't have a good and healthy mental health, all of that will mean nothing to us.
I must thank you all very much for participating tonight. It was
Thank you for having us.
Educational program, and I hope our listeners learn a lot from this, because I take away a lot from it as well. Thanks to Noir Singh for making this program available, and to Devin Bissoon and Ryan Gobin, our technical directors. And thanks to all our listeners and our sponsors, because without you, we will not have a program. So once again, thanks to everyone. And my two-bit closing remarks is this: we have to increase the retirement age from 55 to 62. Just today, I learned a good friend of mine, full of knowledge, and he's a senior technical person, and he's retiring at the end of November, and he already got a job in the States at 55. So my take is that we should not allow people to retire that early in Guyana, 62, because at the time retirement age was pegged at 55 by the British, the living out way the age limit in Guyana was like 62, 63, but now it's 74 and 77. So we should expand that. So once again, thanks to all of you for taking part tonight. Special thanks to you, Mr. Dr. Pro, to you, Ms. Hines, and to you, Ms. Solomon. It was a pleasure discussing this topic with all of you. Thanks again.
Thanks so much, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Same to all of you.